Actually going to be a breakdown video of a press briefing given by U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft and Director of the FBI, Robert Mueller, which was broadcast on September 14th, 2001. And what I'll do is I'll give a little bit of I'll give my additional thoughts on the matter and hopefully fill in the blanks during the playing of the video.
The director of the FBI and I just returned from a memorial service at the National Cathedral and wanted to take this time to give you a report in regard to these matters. Today, the Federal Bureau of Investigation released a list of 19 individuals who have been identified as hijackers aboard the 4 airliners that crashed on Tuesday.
Now, just a little bit of background here. The list came out on the 14th, but the pictures to fit the names on the list came out on the 27th, I want to say. So it came out a little bit more days later. Now, at this point, there is a list of 19 men. During the day on September 11th, there were a number of names that they suspected as being part of the plot. And that a lot of these names that they mentioned were not involved with the plot. And there was a huge discrepancy about certain individuals that were in Florida that basically were, associates of the hijackers, or may have been in the same area as the hijackers, but didn't know them personally. One of those, there was actually a brother, two brothers. One of them died. The other one is still alive. Is Adnan and Amir Bukhari. Now, I didn't know anything about these guys. I learned from them from the great DJ thermal detonator Nelson Martins, an ardent 9/11 researcher and filmmaker himself, who brought the attention of the Bukharis to my attention and to the public's attention many years ago. Amir Bukhari had died in a plane crash in Florida, but one of the houses in Florida, Adnan Bukhari, actually was known to the FBI because when the FBI went to Portland, Maine, this is where Muhammad Atta and Abdulaziz Al-Amari, hijackers of Flight 11, went to. They left their car in the parking lot. And they found a card of Adnan Bukhari, which led, of course, the investigators to two houses in Vero Beach, Florida. One of those houses had been rented by Adnan Bukhari, but it was from Saudi Arabia. An interesting note. And of course, a tenant in one of the houses that was rented by Adnan was cooperating with federal officials, so they filled in the blanks regarding, who these men were. Why was his card found in the vehicle used by the September 11 hijackers? So, and I could name other associates, but I want to, keep droning on. But you get what I'm understanding. You get what I'm trying to say here is that during these initial days, you're going to have a lot of confusion, but a lot of also concrete evidence that might be pointed toward a certain entity, a certain country that we might be engaging in conflict in. But we might be holding back certain evidence, certain information from the public that points to a different direction. Now, that could be speculation too, so just be careful. And for those who watch my channel, I always want you to fact check everything I say and to fact check everything you hear and read. And that's only because you're better off for it and you'll know fact from fiction.
The FBI requests
It'll pause, after I pause it for a
anyone
little
who
bit.
may have information about these individuals, even though these individuals are presumed to be dead. Anyone with information about these individuals immediately contact.
Let me also add too, because he brings up the point that they're allegedly dead. Yes, they're allegedly dead. Now, do I think that the muscle hijackers are dead? Yes. Useful idiots. They may not even have known. Now, me and Darren Harvey from Beyond Ground Zero 9/11 podcast with Sean Russell, we just did a video yesterday talking about this regarding did some of the hijackers or most of them know that this was a martyrdom operation? Because what the FBI also stated in their reports, especially for the Inspector General report of the FBI, that some of the hijackers had no idea that this was a martyrdom operation. Now, the pilot hijackers, are they dead? Are they alive? Well, I have theories regarding Ziad Jarrah and Mohammed Atta. But Mohammed al-Shehhi, Hani Hanjour, are they dead? Probably. Are Mohammed Atta and Ziad Jarrah dead? Probably. But I also have theories. Now, these theories don't have any evidence for them. So it would behoove you to just stick with the facts. Speculation is good when you want to temporarily fill in the blanks to they're like temporary answers to questions that you don't know definitive answers to. But they have to be reasonable. And you'll hear this from time to time. Reasonable speculation. And that is when you have, like, say, for example, uh, Ziad Jarrah didn't get on the plane. Is it reasonable? Sure. Why am I using that? Because 6 phone calls on Flight 93 said there were only 3 hijackers. But his voice was heard in the cockpit voice recorder. That's why I don't say that he wasn't on the plane or that he wasn't on the plane definitively. That's reasonable speculation. Unreasonable speculation is the planes were all holograms. You get the idea.
An FBI field office or call the toll-free hotline. The toll-free hotline, as you know, is 1-866-483-5137. 1-866-483-5137. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has also forwarded a list of more than 100 names to numerous law enforcement organizations. These are the names of individuals the FBI would like to talk to because we believe they may have information that could be helpful to the investigation.
And boy, I would love to see those names. But I'm going to convincingly assume that they are Omar al-Bayoumi, Fahad al-Tameri, Osama Basnan, Muassad al-Jarrah, Mutiab al-Suderi, Adnan Bukhari, Amir Bukhari, Niz Khan, and a boatload of others that were either acknowledging of the plot regarding foreknowledge, partial foreknowledge, assisting these operatives without even realizing who they were, what their plans were. Maybe some of them even knew what their plans were. Any one of these scenarios is um, reasonable.
The organizations that we have submitted these names to include the Federal Aviation Administration, the airlines, FBI field offices, about 18,000 police departments across America,
A little bit too late to
the
put them
U.S.
on the
Border
tip-off
Patrol,
list.
and the U.S. Customs Service. Now, the nature of this list is that it would be changing constantly as people are either removed from it or added to it. but we believe that the individuals on the list may have information that could be helpful to us in our efforts. I want to take this moment to extend our appreciation to state and local law enforcement organizations that have cooperated with this investigation, have acted responsibly, and have been very helpful to us. Their dedication and swift action has been essential to the progress of the investigation. I'm pleased now to call upon the director to give you some more information.
Before we answer questions, I thought I would fill you in on the extent of the investigation to date. As of today, we have 4,000 FBI special agents who are working on the case.
Yeah, it's the largest FBI investigation in its history, and it's called Pentagon. Pentagon, TT, the Twin Towers bombing. And they're not saying that the bombs went off in these buildings, but that the planes were the bombs. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't additional explosives in any of these buildings, not so much in the Pentagon, because nobody ever reported about hearing additional explosives there besides the blowing up of the generator. But the Twin Towers, there were multiple reports of people hearing explosions, even in the basement of the elevators themselves, and also in ground levels of the garages. Now, you had Rick Sanchez of MSNBC News. You had somebody from USA Today, someone named White, I think his name, Walter or something. Not Walter White, but I forgot his name. They reported that that someone had witnessed a truck full of bombs. Whether that's a false report, I don't know. Whether that they saw the bombs or heard the bombs, that I'm not definitively known, but this is coming from third-hand sources. But there would be a lot of sources, a lot of false reports, and maybe some of them were true. I don't know, but you could just imagine how many calls the New York Police Department and the FBI and FEMA and even New Jersey Turnpike and East Rutherford Police Departments, how many false reports there were. If you have I do have the NYPD audio regarding September 11, 2001, and I also have the fire department's transcripts as well. And they are the operators of the fire department, police department were just phenomenal, none shaken, unbothered, and that's the true traits of a professional.
Offices around the country and on various aspects of the investigation, and we have 3,000 support employees also on the investigation. 20 FBI legat offices are running down leads overseas, and all 56 FBI offices around the country are engaged in the investigation. We have conference calls several times a day to make certain that everything is being coordinated appropriately. To date, we have had more than 36,000 total leads. Of those, over 30,000 have come in off the internet. 3,800 have been received on the FBI hotline, and another 2,400 have been generated through the various field offices. As you well know, and I picked up, we've conducted hundreds of interviews around the country. We've served over 30 search warrants in various places. Hundreds of subpoenas have been issued, and we have, in the course of seizing some of executing some of those search warrants, we have seized computers, other documentary information that we are following up on. One other point I'd make before we respond to questions, and that is that we have dispatched sent to the various major airports FBI agents, teams of FBI agents, to assist in quickly resolving any incidents that may come up when passengers or passengers are attempting to board an aircraft or obtain a ticket.
Yeah, and listen, this is important because just the day before, and the only person I've ever heard mention this was DJ Thermal Detonator regarding the additional arrests of like, I used to say it was 50, but it was less than that. It was like, I want to say approximately 30 or 25 to 30 people that were suspected of being associates of the hijackers or being part of the second wave of attacks. Now, I'm not speculating here. Bob Graham, the co-chair of the Joint House Inquiry, once said that they were well aware of a second wave of attacks. This is in following the Bajinka plot. The Bajinka plot actually was about the bombing of 12 airliners, and then you have a covert team hijacking 10 planes and crashing them everywhere in the intercontinental United States. Um, in this case, Zacharias Moussaoui, the alleged 20th hijacker who had not been tortured, had been arrested by the FBI in Minneapolis. Uh, wrote in his own testimony that he was chosen to be at the initial wave of the attacks, but then got demoted to the second wave of attacks. Bin Laden would later on say that he never met Moussaoui, that he didn't know about Moussaoui, but basically, Moussaoui says that, yes, I did meet with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and he did meet with Osama bin Laden. In fact, Zacharias Moussaoui was in the Al Qaeda summit meeting in Malaysia, hosted by the Jemaah Islamiyah operative Yazid Sufat, who has who had rented his condominium to these individuals for a meeting, which they planned allegedly planned the USS Cole bombing and the 9/11 attacks. So,
And there's some question raised. So
I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking
we
about.
can minimize the inconvenience to the person who may well be stopped and also swiftly resolve the issue. And with that, I believe we're happy to take whatever questions you might have.
Director, have you obtained under seal or otherwise any fugitive from justice warrants or leveled any kind of charges against anyone in this investigation?
Well, under seal, I probably couldn't tell you, but I can say that there have been no FBI arrests at this time. Any detentions that have occurred have been pursuant to immigration holds where an individual has been out of status.
Now, wait a minute. Okay. I mentioned Moussaoui before. Here's a great example of the FBI's malfeasance in Minneapolis, especially with the Radical Fundamentalist Unit, also known as RFU, headed by Dave Frasca, okay, and Bob Bowman, I think, Rob Bowman. Harry Samet was the agent who arrested Zacharias Moussaoui and an individual that was with him in the hotel, Hussein Al-Attas. On their possessions, Hussein Al-Attas had a martyrdom will. Moussaoui was separated, and he was telling the agent and other INS officers who were there with Samet that he hated the United States and blah, blah. It's almost like, hey, we're terrorists, right? So, but in their room, now remember, they didn't go there with a warrant. And in their room was a laptop. So the FBI, Harry Samet, writes a FOIA request, a foreign intelligence, I'm sorry, not a FOIA, a FISA request, a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act request regarding the search of Moussaoui's laptop because he's not a U.S. citizen. He's a foreign national. So we have to get a FISA warrant to basically look at whatever he has in his possessions in his room. But the Radical Fundamentalist Unit rejected this and saying that, the definitions of this warrant, whether it's information or criminal, wasn't clear. Harry Samet basically made it a criminal warrant or an information warrant, and there was an argument about this. And on the day of 9/11 or the day after, I think it was on the day of 9/11, that they opened up the laptop. And in it was incriminating evidence of Moussaoui and the plane's operation and about renting a crop duster, trying to obtain poisons and whatnot. So he had something to do with this plot. And according to him, he was chosen by Saudi royal nationals from the kingdom itself. And he knew certain people in the kingdom and said that he would name names if he was allowed to the FBI, but the FBI rejected his idea too. and this is after his sentencing. So you wonder just how deep Moussaoui was involving himself in the planes operation. Why the FBI never really fully investigated it?
List of hijackers, have they been
You wonder. Like, I don't know why.
connected to organizations connected to Bin Laden?
And I can't get into the details of that.
Astonish you that,
Sorry, we'll take one and then two. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
does it astonish you that they trained, and all their training came at the U.S., there were so many of them trained as pilots, and that they lived in the open, they weren't hiding their identities here?
Right.
Does any of that astonish you or shock you?
Well, the tragedies quite clearly astonish and shock me and the country. The fact that there were a number of individuals that happened to receive training at flight schools here is news, quite obviously. If we had understood that to be the case, we would have, perhaps one could have averted this. But I and I think everybody else is just astonished at the extent of the tragedy as a result of what happened last Tuesday. Yes, sir.
Now, this should not come as a surprise to even Mueller. And now he wasn't director back in 1995. Louis Freeh was. But the FBI and the FAA and INS and the State Department all knew about the Pachinko plot because the Philippines National Police, headed by Rodolfo Mendoza, had interrogated one of the Pachinko plotters, Abdul Hakim Murad. And later on, the FBI interviewed Ramzi Youssef, the man who built the bomb for the World Trade Center in 1993 and was also in one of the co-conspirators of the Pachinko plot with his uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. So the FBI knew that planes were going to be used as weapons. They were going to be used whether to place bombs or to be hijacked manually and then crashed into a specific target. It's not news to these people. Now, did Mueller basically think that this day would come to fruition? Probably not. I mean, why would he need to know such details, right? But at the same time, they could have beefed up security at these airports. Now, Paul Thompson mentions this. DJ Thurman Detmayer mentions this. I believe John Gold and Robbie Martin also mentioned this previously about over the years about how the airline industry had failed the American people in regards to proficient warnings. 6 years prior to 9/11, they knew that the FAA, they knew that the airlines were indeed in the crosshairs of terrorists who wished to hijack planes, specifically bin Laden and Al Qaeda. They did not hide this. Now, this is the real conspiracy. The real conspiracy is that the FBI, CIA, and the NSA all claim that they didn't have enough information to stop the attacks. Well, that's not true. They had enormous amounts. And if they couldn't stop the attacks, they could have prevented it by having stricter security measures, stricter application measures regarding people coming from terrorist-related countries or just Islamic countries in general from the Middle East or the Arabian Peninsula, at least the Arabian Peninsula and Southeast Asia. None of this happened. And so the FBI, Mueller here basically is not really telling the truth. And also, look, hit the pod hijackers inside the United States, in Florida, in New Jersey, in New York, in San Diego, all these people that were trying to learn to fly planes, Arizona, Arizona, number one, because that's where a lot of these people and associates come from. And it also has it's the state with the most flight training schools in the country. The warnings were there. And the FBI, Ken Williams, who I interviewed before on the Talking Hour podcast regarding, the warnings of airlines being flight schools that had suspicious individuals that would link to terrorism. But the FBI didn't act on it because it was information only. Sound familiar? Because it was information only cable, and I know nobody read that cable, right?
Director, there were two people removed from a flight last night, I guess, in New York, and those two people's names appeared on a bus. How were they able to board
that was pursuant to a watch list other than those names were were on the watch list for reasons not related to this investigation.
Mr. Mueller, on the list of the hijackers, two quick questions. One is there are several shared last names. Were many of them related to one another? And the second question is Delray Beach and Hollywood, Florida seem to be very common residences. Do you know whether those were like bases of operation for these men?
I can't.
Good question.
While we have the names for the manifests and are still pursuing investigations of those names to try to document and absolutely be certain that the person who went down the plane fits with the name on the manifest, the further association of the names we're still investigating.
Yeah, listen, there's a couple of similar names regarding like Whale and Walid El Sheri. They were brothers. Nawaf and Salim Al Hazmi. They were brothers. So you did have a bunch of people with same last names. Saeed and Hamza Al Ghamdi. I don't think they were brothers, but they shared last names. One thing about Arab names, especially last names, they usually are going by their tribes in Saudi Arabia or in Yemen or the United Arab Emirates, right? Or Bahrain, these countries in the Arabian Peninsula. They do share a common name. Now, there were a number of Abdulaziz Al-Amaris in different format names just in Florida. I think there was I have an Intellis report regarding Abdulaziz Al-Amari, the actual one of the hijackers, and then 11 other different names in various forms. Like, for example, the 9/11 Truth Movement says, oh, well, one of them was alive. His name was Abdul Rahman Al-Amari. Well, there you go. There's the difference, right? Abdul Rahman Al-Amari was a pilot in Saudi Arabia. He called in to the BBC and said, hey, my name is on your website and you're reporting it as a hijacker, but I'm still alive. What they didn't realize until years later, his name was Abdul Rahman Al-Amari. Wasn't Abdulaziz Al-Amari, the hijacker himself. But BBC made a couple of mistakes regarding Khalid Al-Mihdhar. They showed you a picture of some guy I never saw before. It wasn't Khalid Al-Mihdhar, and you get the point, right?
That there are a number of places in the country, without specifying any particular place, where we have conducted a number of interviews and several search warrants, and executed several search warrants.
Tell us about a DC police all-points bulletin being put out about a silver or gray minivan. They may be carrying a chemical weapon.
I can't
Full
tell you anything
support.
about that. Yes, sir.
Full support.
From the cockpit voice recorder and from the flight data recorders of the two planes?
They're currently over at the NTSB, and I think the question should be directed to the NTSB on those at this instant.
They referred us to you.
As of this moment, we have not learned or received anything off those recorders. Well, actually, I should say we have not received anything off the voice data recorder.
Yeah, now this would be true because it takes a couple of days to transcribe the data off the cartridge itself. They found the cockpit voice recorder of Flight 93. It was played for the victims' families. In fact, it's under lock and seal. But according to newfound information from a fellow 9/11 researcher, Sven Larnitz, on Facebook, he basically told me or informed me about a FOIA request regarding the audio of Flight 93, and basically it's under an appeal right now whether to release it. And according to the archives themselves, they're pressuring the FBI to release that to the public because part of that audio was used in a documentary, which would make it public. They may not release the whole audio, but we do have the transcripts. The cockpit voice recorder did survive a Flight 77, but was so badly damaged that they couldn't get anything from it. And of course, Flight 175 and Flight 11, they didn't find the cockpit voice recorder or the flight data recorder.
There is that recorder, which is other than the voice data recorder at the Pentagon that we picked up, and we did receive information off that.
What did that tell you about that flight, about its path?
I can't get into that now, sir. Yes, sir.
Before, but what confidence do you have that the names on the list are actually the people who were on the plane as opposed to aliases or stolen identities? Do you have a level of confidence there yet?
I think we have a fairly high level of confidence, but when we spoke to you yesterday, we had 18 individuals who we believed were the hijackers. We now have a 19th that our investigation has disclosed was probably one of the hijackers on that plane that left Dulles, and consequently, continuous investigation updates our confidence or level of confidence, degree of confidence in assuring that the person who actually was on the plane is associated with the name. Yes, sir.
Now, I wonder if that's the Mosed Kinnear. Now, Mosed Kinnear is somebody, of course, again, this is coming from DJ Thermal Detonator, probably one of the best in the country regarding 9/11, brought to my attention about this sixth hijacker. And there was one flight attendant on that flight 77, Renee May, who called her mother in Las Vegas and said, "Ma, that there are 6 hijackers on this plane." Could she be mistaken? Sure. But the CNN would report regarding an individual dressed in black and black pants, Mosed Kinnear, and claimed that this person was in Flight 77. I'm sorry, the person, black pants and black shoes, was somebody, and yet they showed a picture of Honey Hanjour and said that was Mosed Kinnear. They reversed it. Mosed Kinnear was the guy in the black shirt, black pants, and Honey Hanjour was the balding white guy, balding light skinned guy. I think he was wearing a white shirt, I think. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, Mosed Kinnear. I wonder if that's the person he's relating to.
Suspects or individuals who are still at large who may have been the leaders or masterminds of this conspiracy?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you identified any suspects who you believe are still at large in the United States who were the masterminds or leaders of this conspiracy?
I cannot get into the details of the investigation. Suffice it to say, if we believe that there is somebody in the United States who was associated with this conspiracy and we had evidence upon which to base a charge, we would have and would level that charge. Yes, sir.
Can you say anything about the immigration status of the 19? Were any of them out of legal status?
I believe we tried to provide some of those visa details on the listing that we provided to you. I can say that some of them were out of status, yes. I'm not certain how many or which names or which individuals whose names appeared on the manifest and we believe to be a hijacker was out of status.
Let me fill you in on that, because I did a podcast based on the Riyadh, or is it Jeddah, U.S. Embassy, regarding the application. Now, there was a program called the Visa Express Program in the summer of 2001. It was ordered by the State Department to have better relations with Saudi Arabia and not insult Muslims as saying you have to go through stricter security measures because you're a terrorist. We suspect you're a terrorist, and you have to prove that you're not. You're an actual citizen. Well, the Visa Express Program basically did this. And anybody from Saudi Arabia can fill an application and not even complete it, and then mail it in or hand it into the office. Now, usually a Visa application would require you to fill out the entire form, meaning that where you're going, where you're coming from, how much money do you have, who do you know, where do they live, stuff like this, intimate information. All of these applications, according to Shania Steiger, a U.S. official working at the Riyadh office, which was understaffed, according to her and her associate, whose name escapes me, basically said that these applications were passed through without even a face-to-face meeting. Because after the application is done, the office calls that person in for a face-to-face meeting, gets a better idea of who this person is, then files a release form, and then after that, they are approved of getting their Visa card. But that didn't happen here. All these hijackers, the muscle ones anyway, came through this program. Almost all of them. And they basically were not seen, were not heard by anybody from these embassies. And it really makes you wonder that these men were either chosen or were selected by either Al Qaeda or by somebody else to participate in this operation that they barely knew anything of, even when they got here in the United States? I don't know. I couldn't tell you because there's a lot of missing information out there. And I didn't want to make this a speculative video because it'll basically be all mostly speculation anyway. Sorry about the pause, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you. It's common for the FBI to name a case agent on a big case. Have you yet done that on this one?
The investigation is being run by Tom Picard out of headquarters here, with Dale Watson and numerous other, I would say, senior FBI agents assisting in various capacities.
And the name of the investigation, sir, has the investigation been given a name, and what is it?
Pent-bomb, P-E-N, Pent-bomb, P-E-N-T-B-O-M-B, Pent-bomb.
Can you address the issue of intelligence failure? You didn't know anything about any of these guys. We still don't
Good question.
That was the last question. Thank you.
Yeah, as you can see, he didn't want to answer that one. The intelligence failures, because there were a massive amount of fucking missing intelligence failures there. And I hate to curse and stuff like that, but man, that really grinds my gears when you see Robert Mueller basically smiling, just putting his head down. Now, look, the FBI didn't get information from the NSA and CIA, but the FBI, after the fact, had basically covered up Saudi complicity inside the 9/11 attack. So that's the reason why I'm critical of the FBI after the fact. It should have never happened. In fact, one operation that Robert Mueller himself closed was the story of Khalid Benamrine. Khalid Benamrine was a Tunisian cab driver who went to LAX on orders of Fahad al-Thamari, the imam at the King Fahd Mosque, to pick up two men whose names he didn't know, and they happened to be Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, because the FBI accosted Khalid Benamrine, showed him 30 photographs, and he put out the two men that he picked up, and it was Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. What happened? Mueller closed the case and then deported Khalid Benamrine back to Tunisia. Why? Because Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi are the link to implicate the CIA and Saudi intelligence, the General Intelligence Directorate, or the Bahabeth in Arabic, operating on U.S. soil illegally, monitoring two known Al-Qaeda operatives that had been meeting with the planner of the Cole bombing, Fahad Wali bin Attash, in Malaysia in January of 2000. This information was not shared with the FBI because the FBI would have detained and arrested both al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi. And the operation could have never, 9/11 would have never happened, maybe, had they shared that information. All right, guys, listen, that's the end of the video. I'll be doing daily videos from here on out to share information with you. Latest news, 9/11 related areas as well. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.